placed man and woman in the Garden of Eden. In the beginning, the world was already formed, but it was not yet filled the way God intended. The Bible tells us in Genesis chapter 2, verse 4, that this is the account of how the Lord God made the heavens and the earth, not just with power, but with personal care. At this point, there were no fields of crops, no plants growing on the land. Rain had not yet fallen, and there was no one to tend the ground. So the Lord God began again, not by speaking from afar, but by shaping life with intention. God formed a man from the dust of the ground. Genesis 2:7 tells us that God breathed into the man's nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living being. This was not rushed. This was not distant. God's breath turned dust into life. From the very beginning, humanity was created through closeness, through God's personal touch. Then, the Lord God prepared a place. Genesis 2:8 says, God planted a garden in Eden in the east. This garden was not wild or unfinished. It was beautiful, ordered, and full of life. Trees grew there, trees that were pleasing to the eye and good for food. At the center of the garden stood two special trees, the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. God placed the man in the garden, not to wander without purpose, but to work it and take care of it. This tells us something important. Work was not a punishment. Purpose existed before sin. God gave the man meaningful responsibility and a place to belong. God also gave clear guidance. In Genesis 2:16-17, God told the man that he was free to eat from any tree in the garden except one. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil was not to be eaten from. This command was not meant to restrict joy, but to build trust. God was teaching the man that freedom works best within loving boundaries. But something was still missing. For the first time in creation, God said something was not good. Genesis 2:18 says, "It is not good for the man to be alone." God, who had created the entire universe, looked at the man and saw his need, not for more land, not for more tasks, but for relationship. So God caused the man to fall into a deep sleep. While the man slept, God took part of the man's side and formed a woman. Then God brought her to the man. This moment is quiet, sacred, and deeply meaningful. The woman was not created from the ground like the animals, but from the man, showing equality, connection, and shared humanity. When the man saw her, he recognized something new. In Genesis 2:23, he said she was bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. This was not ownership. This was recognition. God had created companionship. The Bible then explains in Genesis 2:24 that this is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh. This was God's design for human relationship, built on unity, trust, and mutual care. At the end of the chapter, Genesis 2:25 tells us that the man and the woman were naked and they felt no shame. This is important. There was no fear, no hiding, no embarrassment. They lived fully known and fully accepted by each other and by God. The story of Eden is not just about a garden. It is about who God is. God is a creator who forms life with care. God is a provider who prepares a place of abundance. God is a guide who sets loving boundaries. God is a companion who understands our need for relationship. And the deeper lesson is this: human beings were never meant to live alone. We were created for connection with God and with one another. We were created with purpose, dignity, and belonging. Eden shows us God's original intention for humanity, not struggle, not isolation, but life lived in harmony with Him. Though the story continues beyond this chapter, Genesis 2 reminds us of something timeless, that God's desire has always been relationship, that life works best when we trust His design, and that we are most whole when we live in connection, not isolation. In the garden, humanity walked with God. And even today, God still invites us back into that relationship. That is the story of the man and the woman in Eden. And that is the heart of the garden of the Lord. If you like this video, like and subscribe for more.